Star Trek Prodigy, Season 2, Episode 1 Review. Into the Breach, Part 1.
Yeah. Where did it leave off so I don't do spoilers for the second?
They
They had just found the other shuttle bay and almost got caught because
Okay, so
Murph was
that's where
dripping. I
that's
think
where
that
it left
was
off, and there's a leak somewhere.
well,
yeah.
no,
The
Murph
Andorian said
was
something.
was
No.
no,
The
yeah.
Andorian saw Murph's slime and said, "I think there's a leak."
Oh yeah. You're right.
Okay,
But they saw the
that's where
Infinity,
it
and
ended.
that's about where it was. So yeah,
Okay.
I mean, everybody is basically doing what you expect, except maybe Jacob. Like
Eh,
Dal's trying to. He's a bit too kirky. And
Dallas playing hooky because he's too cool for school.
yeah,
And he's like, I wanted to join Starfleet so I could be a badass and save the world, save worlds and explore, not do homework. Uh,
yeah. I was talking more at that prep school they were at because they were
yeah,
but it kind of extends into what they're doing on the ship because
yeah.
this
Well,
is
they're all
kind of a
doing
big
as training for their, for their areas of expertise.
yeah, and
Rock
to
is,
prep them to get into the actual academy because they're not in the
yeah,
academy. They're in a prep school that prepares you for the academy because they're still talking about academy applications.
yeah.
yeah.
Um. So a few things I want to point out. I think Janeway. Well, she probably didn't know that they're there at the time, but I'm pretty sure Janeway was gonna figure out that they were gonna, get there because I don't think the slip up with the doctor was, an accident.
Yeah, I don't think so because, first of all, the doctor doesn't really slip up that way very often.
Yeah.
He's not exactly a fumble over his words type.
Hey, maybe Janeway's like, well, technically it's illegal for Starfleet to do it, but technically they're not Starfleet yet.
She is the kind to warp the rules.
So that's just my guess there. My
I mean,
other future thing is Dal finally reads the time temporal 101 thing right, and like something
temporal
comes,
mechanics
yeah,
101.
and something comes up, and it's like, no, I read this thing. That if you do this, this thing will happen.
Again, that there's a lot of lead up to there. I don't think it's in the second one, but there's got to be like some sort of payoff with that.
Yeah,
Didn't you read Temporal Mechanics 101?
yeah. So
And
that's
Yeah,
it's like
they
why.
planted that
exactly
seed. It's got to come up at some point. They've also planted the seed of Rock Talk knowing how to stop triples from breeding, which was one hell of a thing.
I know.
So yeah,
Like,
those are my only
wait, did she
guesses
just
for the
do
future.
what? As she was running out the door, did she just how to stop triples from producing? How? What?
Yeah, you burned them all.
No, it you just starve them to death.
But yeah, those are my
But
only guesses for the future. I don't really have anything more for future guesses, at least.
yeah, well, it's the big thing is this has been a shift in sort of the how these how the show works for this episode because the
It
status
was
quo has been changed for the moment,
it
at least
didn't
for this first episode.
they had a purpose in the first one, like a clear cut direction and all that, and then this one they fulfilled their directive that they had in the first one, so now they have to formulate a new paradigm. They need a new like formula for where they're going from there.
Yeah,
So
where is this thing going? And we're going to end up with,
Where do we
because
go from here?
yeah, because the whole first season was them getting the protostar back to the
Getting to
Federation.
Starfleet,
Yeah, getting back
although,
to them.
and then blowing up the protostar
yeah, then
to save
and then-
Starfleet.
yeah, and now you've had a sort of a break and a training arc, which so all of them have had off-screen.
Murph is a badass ninja, by the way.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah,
Worked out.
and the sort of off-screen gap, presumably where they've been taking classes at this prep school and doing all this stuff, they now if they show up with some new skill or technique or they're better at something, they've actually written in a reason why they've got new skills. They're not just, oh yeah, no, they suddenly have a new skill. No, they've actually got that written into this thing.
Yeah. And Gwendala is now visiting her her home world
Before she exists.
before she exists.
I hate temporal mechanics.
Like,
I agree with Miles. I hate temporal
so
mechanics.
Weird. It's like,
It's fascinating.
I don't know.
If you think too hard about it, your eyes go all cross-eyed.
It's like she's going back. She's going to her home world before became all bad, but she's in the future. It's like your father goes to the future, has a job. Time is fucking weird.
And apparently, she and Dal are a long distance thing, somewhat. Not quite yet, but on the way.
Thank God it crashed.
It was a little awkward, but
Like, oh.
Yeah, but I mean that young love.
Yeah, oh yeah, no questioning. Like, this is completely in character for these characters. Like,
And
this feels
it's
like
completely normal. Like even kids, this modern kids, contemporary versus that. It's most kids go through that. I didn't, but then I'm not normal.
You skipped childhood.
But yeah, it's completely believable for their age. This is exactly the kind of thing you'd expect from this age group.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And and most of them are doing kind of what you expect them to do if you put them in a normal school. Rocktalk is thriving because she wants to know more, and oh yes, the school is literally trying to hand her knowledge, and she's just sponge. I love this.
I want to know everything.
She's kind of the Hermione. Just sponge. And you might get us killed or worse, expelled.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So she's thriving. Zero, I think that's the name of the Medusan character.
Yeah.
Yeah, the names are, I'm remembering them, but they're just sort of off. But yeah, Zero is taking up medical lessons, which is interesting. Also training under the EMH, so that's. I'm glad they kind of did that, because that was an interesting way of, sort of, they have things in common. They're not, they're not like the beings around them.
Yeah.
He's hologram in some ways. Like, physically, they aren't the same as the people around them. They have.
Yeah, but
He's a hologram.
The
and
difference between Zero and that hologram doctor is, I'm just guessing here. The hologram can probably be programmed to feel not
No,
feelings, but
no. In fact, there was an entire episode of Voyager revolving around that particular point.
oh shit, really?
Yeah, because
The
he's got
the doctor cannot feel, like he cannot eat, he cannot feel, he cannot do any of that. So he, at one point, in order to hide away, because they were going through a segment of space where holograms were illegal, like photonics they were called, were illegal. So he put himself into Seven of Nine's neocortex through her Borg implants. He basically like took over her body in order to protect himself and hide away. And so he was actually flirting with the captain of the guy who had arrested them for transporting illegal photonics. And he was flirting with the guy, not realizing the guy was flirting with him. He was just like, as Seven of Nine, just like, oh my god, this food is so amazing, and like, oh my gosh, drinking is so, the tastes and the textures and everything is so amazing, which he can't do. He could never, feel it for himself until he was able to possess a human form.
Sounds like he needs a software
So
patch. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So in this show, there are two characters with 7 seasons of character development behind them in Janeway and the EMH.
Technically, I think more for Janeway, because wasn't she a background character in Nemesis? I haven't seen Nemesis in so long, but
she does make an appearance in one of the movies, but as Admiral Janeway, and she talks to Picard for like. Yeah,
she was Admiral Janeway. I think it was Nemesis because she was at the wedding of Deanna and Riker.
I don't remember seeing her there, but I could be wrong. But I know she was doing like, she was saying, hey, Picard, this, which we do get some name drops of Picard, and we also get Jellicoe, which is funny. I like that Jellicoe is still around, and like he's exactly making the kind of decisions you expect Jellicoe to make. Like, the thing about Jellicoe is his decisions a lot of times make sense. He's a very grounded sort of character, but he does lack some risk taking, some risk taking. He still has some, but like he's very by the book and has a very different command style than Janeway or Picard. Like, they're very different. And so, but it does sound the kind of thing she was talking about him doing. It's like, no, that sounds like something Jellicoe would do. Jellicoe, we don't really, for those who haven't watched TNG, Jellicoe, like, he only showed up for like a few episodes in TNG, and he kind of takes over the Enterprise for a little bit because Picard's off doing something else. And so, but he and Picard have a very different command style. And he does his best to sort of get everybody to kind of do what he wants them, get them sort of on his way of doing things. But from what I heard, though, Jellicoe was an opportunity for a lot of things that people wanted to do, but they couldn't do before, because like it gave an excuse, like, Jellicoe, why are they doing this now? Okay, well, because Jellicoe said something and ordered it. Like, Troy actually got a uniform, I think, from that point forward.
Yeah.
Which I actually am a big fan of them, actually having uniforms, because I think
Well, she
you know,
was a big fan too, because before she was just the eye candy and she really didn't have much like purpose. And then like, a lot of the stuff she did, Guinan could have taken her place in them, and a lot of her like advice and stuff Guinan was better at. So
yeah,
her ship's counselor thing really didn't have much use. She was basically there to be the eye candy on the, on the bridge. And so Jellicoe giving her a uniform and like giving her something that covered her better was definitely a yes,
yeah, it
please.
made her look more professional and more like she was meant to be doing something. Like she looked like somebody, you you could see like, okay, they feel, she feels more respected in that, and it just like,
Yeah, and that's why Certus was like, yeah, she definitely was into it too.
yeah, because that's what I heard. Like, that's one of the things I heard was like Jellicoe. Like, I don't remember all the things that they wanted to do, but there were some things that like there was no reason if they all started changing the things they wanted to change for no reason, it would look weird. But they're like, well, if Jellicoe's taking over,
A
then
new
like
captain gives new
he can make.
rules.
I don't want you. I want you in actual uniform, Troy. You're a Starfleet officer. Show up tomorrow in an actual uniform.
Yeah,
Then Certus gets what she wants. I think it looks nice and professional and uniform and good. So you get that bonus, and you also don't have to explain why, because it's Jellicoe. Jellicoe's like, no, I prefer all my bridge crew to actually be in uniform, which is not an unreasonable thing for him to want. But for Picard to
no,
suddenly make that, so if Picard made that change, it would be weird. But if Jellicoe makes it, it's like, no, that's a new captain making a different decision. So, but yeah, I heard like there was a few things that they wanted to do, but they needed an excuse, and Jellicoe was a good excuse for suddenly, oh yeah, no, Troy's in a uniform now, and then okay, that's Jellicoe, that makes sense.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, apparently now Admiral Jellicoe.
Which I mean makes sense.
Yeah, he was.
They,
The fact that they threw him on the Enterprise D to command the Enterprise D means he was a pretty experienced captain at the time. So, you know,
and he was already pretty old, so
yeah,
if I remember correctly.
yeah. So it's not. And then Janeway becoming an admiral eventually makes sense because she just spent 7 years doing the most first contacts, like by any Starfleet captain ever, while on her own away from resupply, and just like, yeah, no support. Like, we had met like one other Starfleet ship, and they were doing some evil things, and I won't get into that because that's another. But yeah, like we're yeah. She went from being a rookie captain to being probably one of the most experienced, like getting the most experience the hard way, of anybody, and becoming like an expert on the Borg and like the Delta Quadrant in general. It's just like, yeah, Janeway earned her admiralty by just spending 7 years in hell, essentially. As far as captains, like captains don't get that much experience.
Technically, more than 7 years if you take the year of hell into account that was made non-existent due to
Temporal mechanics.
temporal mechanics.
Oh, that's evil.
Because don't forget, there's that one dude who was played by the guy who plays Red Foreman in that 70s show. He was this alien whose wife died from this war, and he was trying to bring her back by changing variables and various things and trying to restore his empire.
Yeah, the Crenum.
But every time he changed something else changed. And all those variables just like kept getting worse and worse, and he brought Chakotay aboard, if I remember correctly, and Chakotay is like, well, if you change this, then this will happen, and this and that. And finally, the decision was, if he blows up his ship and makes it so his ship never, was able to do time travel, Janeway, the Krenim Empire was restored and everything else, and the year from hell never happened.
But basically she went through hell. She did more in those 7 years than a lot of officers do in several careers. So
Yeah.
Her going from captain to admiral in 7 years, it's a fast track, but she earned it.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, she even went back in time and brought them home faster. Her admiral self brought them home faster, which, again, temporal mechanics, totally confusing things. But
yeah. So we have two characters now that are, we have information on. We actually have, you can actually just go back and watch Voyager and learn a lot about them. The other thing was, I was just going through the different ones and what they were, different characters and what they were doing. And talk about EMH, and then Jacob, like most of them are doing exactly kind of what you think they would be doing. Jacob is like, I know he's trying to impress that elder Tellarite, but like the whole, I agree with that one person who's like, a Tellarite being polite is disturbing. Was it the doctor or was it? Yeah, it's like the Tellarite being polite.
It was one of those Nova Squadron people. If I remember correctly.
Somebody did it, and it was like, that's a little weird for a Tellarite, because Tellarites are known arguers, and they will sling mud all over the place.
They are contrarians. It doesn't matter. You tell them that the sky is blue, they're gonna go and say, no, it's actually periwinkle.
No, okay.
Yeah, they're nitpicky arguers.
I got another thing for the future. Jacob's like, for a long time he's gonna try to be polite and nice, right? But he's gonna run into somebody that he does not like, and it's just gonna come out all at once. Jacob thinks you are the most rudest, nastiest person Jacob has ever met.
Yeah, and then
I also don't like those Nova kids.
Well, of course, because that's what you're supposed to feel. That's how you're supposed to feel. But
I don't get that though. Okay,
I get Vulcan.
So like I get, new kid coming to school. The popular kids don't like them, right? But they saved Star Trek. Even if Janeway tried to keep that a secret, right? That's not something that's like easily kept a secret.
Yeah, well, the thing is, you can save the world, save the entire Federation, but they also are outsiders. They are they don't belong. They weren't formally trained and weren't given the same.
And they also got to do things that the other people wouldn't have been, some privileges that weren't given to them, because they got to basically run a ship for a while on their own.
Before even joining Starfleet or the Academy, they had their own ship. They traveled from the Delta Quadrant in the top of the line best ship of the fleet. and that they stole, and they didn't get punished for stealing the ship. They didn't get, ousted for it.
I mean,
They were
technically.
given the chance. No, this is how they're seeing it,
Oh
because
yeah,
keep in mind, this is a prep school. They are all preppy, haughty,
And they
popular
probably
kids
had to do a hell of a lot in their
to get
younger
there.
years
they
to get
they
to a
are
point where
this
they have
this
focused their
is
entire lives on getting into this prep school, so
that
they
this
can
is like
or
they
cram
can focus their
school.
lives on prep school in order to get to the academy, so they can get to be an officer, so they can maybe become a captain one day and have their own ship. And these guys
They
did it in like
they have
accidentally.
they went on the they did the fast track. They did the best of everything. Their parents probably like got their parents are probably admirals
yeah,
and
I was about to
captains,
say that
and the
their parents probably paid like a pretty penny, and most of them
well,
didn't have to do
there's
any
no,
work.
they don't really use money
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much,
money.
but still, their parents are probably
It's
admirals or
it's not to say that
the or
there weren't influences,
Yeah.
you
yeah,
know, and
they're probably all from influential people, and it's kind of the scholarship kid in a who gets the free ride because they're smart or because they're good at sports, and you know they all the other kids who paid their way, who got in because they're special, they're influential, and then you have the one poor kid who goes to the prep school because they're smart or they're special, and everybody else looks down on them because you're the poor kid. What are you doing in with the us
it's
elites?
the beginning of Elrond High School Host Club.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
I,
And that's only without the whole you know prostitution
Yeah, it's
thing.
just the very beginning.
Yeah,
yes.
but that's kind of the point with you know they don't belong because they aren't you know related to somebody special. They're not, they just got a free ride
They
because
weren't influential. They weren't from influential. They didn't spend their whole lives
training
pruning
for
and
that moment.
chaining everything they have into this one thing so they can get into this exact prep school, which is going to make it a lot easier to get into the academy rather, so that they can get into the become an officer, so they can eventually get on a fast track to the
And if you
captain's chair.
think about the training they're going through and the specifics of that training, it's very it's very fast track. It's like, oh, you're training to be a doctor, you're training to be a science officer, you're training to be an engineer, and they're already specializing instead of just general training like Jake went not Jake Nog went through when he was training to be an in Starfleet, you know.
Um.
Yeah, they're less of they had all that time before
Well, yeah,
sort of
but I'm
pre
saying
prep sky. They had all that stuff prepping them for this,
yeah,
and then they're
their
just going even
adventures
further with those things that they were already doing.
their adventures gave them their specificity, but while everybody else was training their whole life, it's like my parents, my father is an admiral and I've been training to be an admiral like him ever since I was in diapers, versus, oh, I
They
stole a
found a
ship.
ship,
I brute forced the Kubayashi
Kobayashi
Maru,
Maru.
and I beat the Kubayashi Maru. It's like, what? You what?
Yep,
Yeah,
without
I
cheating.
beat it.
Just
I
did it a lot.
I
I
beat
just
it
banged my head
without
against the wall
cheating.
until I figured it out and beat it.
I just brute forced that shit. I didn't cheat.
uh,
I just
I think you
Try
missed
and
the
try
point
again
of the
until you
Kobayashi
succeed.
Maru, but that's a thing.
Okay, so we probably talked about this before in a different review, but why are still ships banned or whatever?
Oh, because of if I remember correctly, it's
The
the
Treaty of Algernon.
Kittimer. I think it was part of the Kittimer Accords, but
No, that's the Treaty of Algernon. The Kittimer
uh,
Accords are with the
the
Klingons, I think.
well, yeah, but I
Treaty of
thought the
Algernon is
Klingons
why
and
they don't have cloaks.
the Romulans have cloaks, and the Klingons.
Yeah, it was an offset thing. I don't know what they got outside of that, but what we know is
But
that the Treaty of
it's
Algernon set the neutral zone. They got the Federation got something out of the Romulans, but the Romulans,
it's
their
a
thing is
tentative peace treaty where the Romulans aren't gonna invade, aren't supposed to invade, or
there's basically a DMZ between the Federation and the Romulans, and both sides are supposed to stay on their own side. And part of the treaty was they must have gotten some sort of concession from the Romulans, but to kind of match up, they were probably something smaller and more boring. But the thing that the Romulans got out of the treaty, besides the sort of DMZ, was that the Federation would not develop cloaking technology. That was their thing. And so that's why Starfleet does. That's why in-universe Starfleet doesn't have it. The other side of that is, though, depending on whether the Treaty of Algernon is still in effect with what happened with the supernova, whether they consider the Empire still around to be, or if there's whether there's a successor state that can still hold that end of the treaty. If there's a successor state to hold that end of the treaty, then yes, it's still in effect.
Yeah, but that did it happen yet?
Well, they were talking about they were helping with the Romulan recovery efforts.
Okay.
I think they did
I
mention
know
it. So I think
timeline
we're
is
in this part of
going.
the timeline where,
Yeah,
you know,
because I know
Voyager's
it
come back,
happened.
the
I know it
supernovas happen.
I know
Yeah.
it happens in Picard, and like part of the plot of the first season of Picard has to do with the Romulan rescue efforts.
I'd
And
have to
I
look up.
know that in the 2008 Star Trek series with Chris Pine and them, they used the plot of the first movie was that they went back in time in order to try to stop, in order to destroy Vulcan and Earth because they didn't save the Romulans. So
Yeah. So, but basically, this treaty is sitting there saying, Starfleet, you can't develop cloaking technology. They agreed not to do that. But with the supernova, is there a successor state? Is the Empire still around enough to be a successor state, or is there another state that's coming up, or what's going on with that? Is there a state that can hold on to that other end of the treaty? Because if the other end of that treaty falls apart, Starfleet can do whatever the hell they want, with cloaks and whatnot, and it's the Treaty of Algernon is null because the other side of the argument is gone. But which makes you wonder if what was the I forget what the kind of cloak it was, but the one, if the Algernon is falling apart,
are you talking
then
about the one from the
the
next
phase
generation
cloak?
Pegasus?
Yeah, the Pegasus. That was. Wonder if they'd instantly go, oh, so the Treaty of Algernon is no longer in effect. Yeah, okay, we're gonna pull the phase cloak out of mothballs. We're gonna mass produce that shit, and we're gonna put it on all Starfleet.
Yeah,
ships.
but if you noticed the way they were being so secretive about it, I'm pretty sure cloaking technology is still illegal.
Yeah, so I'm assuming the Treaty of Algernon, at the very least, they're treating the treaty like it's still in effect at this point.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, they're treating it like it is. Whether it is, I don't know, because I don't know enough about what's happening post-Nova in the Romulan Empire in canon.
Yeah.
But,
and the timeline is so wibbly wobbly, it's hard to keep track.
Yeah, it's not that. Oh, the funny thing was there was a Doctor Who reference because there was a timey-wimey. I caught that.
I did too. It's like, timey-wimey. Oh, that was funny.
But yeah, so like depending on I'd have to look and see what the actually match up the years, figure out when that is, and it should be post Nova because I think they were talking about the rescue efforts. Like they're in the middle of that, so that kind of gives you an idea of about when this thing is occurring. Because it's definitely post Voyager, because Janeway is here. So
and Janeway's an admiral.
Yeah, the fact that Janeway is in the Alpha Quadrant tells you that and an admiral means it's been a little bit. So it's at least, like you said, was it Nemesis? This is post Nemesis because she's an admiral. Well, not necessarily because she could have been an admiral before Nemesis, but we know at the very least.
Okay, so Star Trek Prodigy takes place in the year 2384.
Yeah. And when does Picard, because you said Picard was dealing with post-supernova stuff, when does that take place?
2399 and 2401.
Huh.
The series takes place 20 years after Picard's last appearance in Nemesis. Picard is still affected by the death of Data in that film and the destruction of Romulus in Star Trek 2009.
Look when the Romulan supernova was, because it could still be. While you're in Memory Alpha.
2380s. It was discovered that the Romulan sun would soon go supernova, threatening to destroy the Romulus system and its inhabitant planets. Destroyed as a supernova, then consumed by a black hole in 2387.
Okay, so this is 2384. Well, maybe they were doing some effort beforehand, or maybe that Prodigy number is the starting date, and then like I don't know. Anyway, I thought they said something about, but if not, anyway, it would make sense to Treaty of Algernon.
The first season of Star Trek Prodigy takes place 5 years after the events of Star Trek Nemesis. The show is set in post-Nemesis decade of Star Trek's future history, includes elements from Picard and Lower Decks.
Which is
some other notable events that take place during the season include Romulan sun is approaching a supernova. And
so they're Picard at the point where they're trying to evacuate, but they don't have enough ships, and they're trying to evacuate them before things happen.
Yeah.
But they're unsuccessful in getting everybody out.
Yeah.
And so, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So they leave Tars Lamora on in 2383, 5 years after Voyager returned to Earth.
And then it was maybe a year at most.
Yeah, they were there.
They made it back to Federation space
within a year. Yeah.
Because it wasn't a very long. You don't really see them appreciably age, or you hear a lot of things like that. So it's not probably a really long time that they had the protostar.
And considering their kids age fast. So it
probably
notice
it probably
a
wasn't
huge
that
difference.
long.
Yeah.
But let's see, what else was there? I think we covered just about everybody. Dal was doing what you expect Dal to do.
Yeah.
Gwyn is off on her thing. Rock Talk is just absorbing science like crazy. Zero is doing medical. Jacob is presumably doing engineering. We just don't really know. We don't really hear about what he's doing. They show him with the core,
Yeah.
and I can't imagine him doing anything else. So he's doing engineering. And then who's left? Oh, Murph is doing some security stuff. So that's not surprising. So yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It could be interesting to see whether which way this thing goes, whether it's going to go on. We're definitely going to use the Infinity, and the Protostar crew are going to be gone with the actual Janeway, or she sends a hologram of herself with them with the Infinity to go do stuff. I don't know. Or is this going to be we're going to change how this is going to work, and they're basically going to be actually doing some science on the, not science, but actually doing like schoolwork on the Voyager A. Like they're going to this is actually going to be them learning stuff. But it feels like it feels more like the former than the latter. We might get a little more of the latter, but at some point this thing's gonna snap and we're gonna do the former. Because Gwyn losing signal with Gwyn, that's gonna be something. And then the whole showing us the Infinity or whatever it was called, I think it was Infinity, showing us that like the kids are gonna be on it at some point. Like that's just you don't set that up without it being a thing. So that's going to be a thing at some point.
That'll be fun. Well, let's see. I got nothing to add.
Yeah, and this is just part one, so the part next week when we do part two, it'll probably all these things we're coming up with will probably be answered in some shape or form next week.
And once
probably should have.
I'll prove that I'm psychic.
I got ESPN.
Yes. Well, and nothing more. I guess I shall end it because I am fabulous.
Okay.
Oh wow, Rock Talk is only 8 years old.
Yeah, but didn't she go through that like time when everybody else was slowed down?
4 months.
She aged
that was
a little
4
bit.
months.
4 months.
Yeah, but
okay.
she was for like 4 months.
Yeah, but remember, to her species, 8 years old might be like 20. Maturity. Or I don't know how their species works. It's kind of like the D&D joke is where the bartender has to like take out this giant book to find out the legal drinking age for that specific species. Okay, so you're an elf. So you're elf. Okay, you at least have to be like 1,500 years old to start drinking. Kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
Because the hobbits are in Lord of the Rings, they're not considered of age until they hit 33.
Yeah. Actually, I think it was 20 something.
I've just read. I've just started reading Fellowship, so
because they're called queens.
Yeah, but they're fully of age at 33. That's because Bilbo's 111, Frodo is 33. They make a gross together. Their years together are gross 144, and there was also something of a coming of age sort of thing, like fully coming into his own. Because that's probably why Bilbo waited till he was 33, because then he could just hand him back in, because he had to worry about his his relatives wanting a slice
Yeah.
of bag end.
Uh-huh. So Dal is 17. Gwen is 17. Jankum is 16. Zero doesn't really have an age specification because they are a non-corporeal, genderless, energy-based life form.
Yeah.
Rock Talk is 8. And Murph doesn't have an age either.
Honestly, I thought Janko was gonna be like the oldest. At least like 19.
Well, keep in mind, we don't know how old he really is
Yeah,
because
true.
he was in space for who knows how long. I think it was like 2-3 years.
Yeah, true.
And he was awakened in order to fix things. And that's how that's why he started using his name specifically, because whenever he said I and used a pronoun, the computer was like, incorrect data, please specify. It's like Jankum Pog wants to,
Yeah, he had to end up talking about himself in the third person so that he could get things to
because
work.
trained him to. But yeah, he's 16 apparently. This is according to Wikipedia.
Yeah, we don't know how much time has passed since the beginning of the story. Probably less than a year, but
yeah.
so they could be a little bit older than that, but not by much.
Okay. Well.
So at the most, Dal and Gwen would be like 18 or 19.
Yeah.
Which means they're basically, he's actually, of them, Dal is actually the closest to being just straight up able to apply to the academy.
Which is probably why he was slacking off.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, Gwendala could too, because
but she's off doing her own thing.
Yeah, but I mean, technically, Dal is the least able to because he's an augment, which I think is so that whole thing pisses me off, and it's a plot point in Strange New Worlds, which the plot point is meant to piss you off because it's like allegorical and stuff and blah blah blah, but the
it
fact
also pops
that
up in DS9.
they did not control, he did not choose to be created augmented. He did not choose to be what he was. He doesn't have parents. He wasn't raised. He grew up on the streets as a street rat, basically, in space, in this like prison camp. And yet, because he's genetically augmented, he can't join Starfleet. He's illegal. They tried to arrest him just because somebody else manipulated his genes before he was born. Like, that's just so infuriating. And there's also a plot point in Strange New Worlds with a similar premise that also infuriates me.
Yeah.
I mean, at least in DS9, he knew. Like, before he actually applied to to Starfleet, he knew what he was doing was wrong. I mean, in Strange New World, she did too, but like his parents did it to him. But he knew what was going on. Whereas in Strange New Worlds, it's a cultural thing. Everybody in their culture does that. It's kind of like getting ear gauges or a lip gauge for certain tribes. It's like it's part of their culture, and to be discriminated against by that.
Yeah. Well,
that just like angers me.
See you next week in part 2.
Yes.
Okay.